Hey, it's Cobra here at MaddenGuides.com, and I hope that you guys had a very, very Merry Christmas with your family. But right now I want to get back on the field and start showing you guys some more breakdowns. And what we're going to do for this breakdown is show a defensive blitz. And this one we're going to show is from the 3-4 Bear. The name of the defense is called Engage 8. Now, I can tell you this, I don't see a lot of guys breaking down the Engage 8 anymore. I don't know why. I mean, it's still a defense you can create some pressure with, so I thought I'd go ahead and break this one down for you this evening and kind of let you guys see what you can do with it. So we're just going to the Patriots playbook. That's what we're going to use here, as you're going to see on your screen. So I want to get into the Patriots playbook on the defensive side of the ball and just show you what you guys can do with this particular blitz. So here we go. You can see on your screen we're in the Patriots defensive playbook. We're going to go into the 3-4 Bear, and then we want to go down here and pick the Engage 8. Now, there's one thing I do want to point out with this defense. You do want to go ahead and flip it at the play call screen. You notice I just flipped it. Also, one of the other things about this particular defense, if you guys are using base align, you cannot use this particular, for this particular blitz, do not use base align. It will not work. So make sure you got base align. If you guys have it on set by default on, that's fine. But when you get on the field, make sure you turn it off, because otherwise blitz doesn't work the way it's supposed to. For some reason, I don't know why, it just doesn't work the way I'd like it to work. So I want to point that out to you. The other thing is, and I'll point that out later in the breakdown, is that you cannot call bump and run coverage or press coverage, and I'll show that to you in just a bit. So let's go ahead and get into the onto the screen here. So what we're going to do is go ahead and run that defense there, and then we're going to go ahead and run this from the gun doubles. We'll find a play out of here. So go ahead and run this fade halfback wheel play. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to show it from another formation as well, but just know that it pretty much works against any formation in the game as far as with the setup, minus as long as you don't have base line on. All right, so what I want to show right off the bat here, which makes this defense kind of cool, is these two outside corners are in man coverage. And that's nice because one of the things this is going to allow you to do is fool your opponent. So say your opponent was to go ahead and put a receiver in motion, such as you see on your screen right there. It looks like man coverage. That's what he's thinking. He's thinking man coverage, probably just based on what he's looking at. More than likely cover one, something like that, if he sees that. But really, this is not a man coverage. On the outside, it has the man coverage principles on the outside, but not to the inside. And that's what we're going to show you guys here with this setup. And the other thing with this particular setup, it's pretty easy to set up. That's the beautiful thing about it. You don't even have to move anybody. I want to go ahead and show you something with this particular defense. You're going to have 8 defenders in the box. So more than likely, your opponent probably ain't going to want to run against this. So he's going to probably have to pass if you see something like that, because you're daring him to pass because you got 8 defenders in the box. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set this up, and we're going to go ahead and put this guy right here. We're going to go ahead and put him to the left as you look at your screen. We're going to go ahead and put him in a seam flat over to the left. And the same thing here. We're going to go ahead and put him in a curl flat or seam flat, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to put him to the right. So those two guys are playing flats right there, or the curl flats as you look. This guy right here, we're going to go ahead and put him in QB spy. This is the guy that I generally would control more than likely, although there's a couple other guys I can control, and I'll show it to you in just a second, depending on how you want to go about it. If you decide to go with this setup right here, which is fine because this is where you're going to get the pressure at, this is the basics of the defense as far as the setup goes. The very bare minimum, I mean, you should get some pressure. I want to show you guys something when we run through this. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And a lot of times the pressure is going to come off the edge right there. Now, one of the things you want to do, if we go back into instant replay, let's go back into instant replay with this setup, is if you decide to control this defender right here, which is the one that I'm in control of, you're not really using him for QB spy, although he is going to be doing that. But what you really want to do is put him like this. I tried to put him in hook zone, but I think he does better in QB spy. But your main objective right here is to take away any of the short middle passes that are coming in this area here. So just keep that in mind. That's what you're trying to do with him if you decide to go that route and control him. Now, let's go back into the setup again. I want to show you another way of doing it. It's basically the same setup. So we're going to go here, here, and here. So we got the same setup with the flats, the curl flats, and then we got that guy in QB spy. And then if you got time, what you can do is you can go ahead and slant the defensive line to the inside. Not necessary, but what it does put those linemen where they go further inside the block, and therefore it makes it, generally, it'll make it a lot more room for this pass rusher to get pressure off the edge. Speaking of that pass rusher that I'm showing right here as you look at your screen, make sure he's fast. I mean, he needs to be, I would say 82 above. This guy right here, I believe he's 86 speed. So the faster your linebacker you got, the better off you are. So just keep that in mind. So again, we got that set up. We're going to go ahead and run it, and we're going to get that same edge pressure again off the edge. All right. So that's the setup for the most part right there. We've got our, our thing going on and all that. Let's go ahead and do the setup again here. We're going to go ahead and put these guys in the same things before. For you guys that play in leagues, can't move anybody, this is a defense you can do because you don't have to move anybody. We're going to go ahead and control this guy here, and now we're going to go ahead and crash the defensive line. So this time I've switched off to the left end who's lined up right here. Oops, wrong illustration there, but I switched off to the left end right here. And what I'm going to do with him is I'm going to allow him to rush, and then once I see that this linebacker gets pressure and past the line of scrimmage and gets around, then I'm going to drop him back as well. So let's go ahead and do that, and then try to get him back in there. And right there, I couldn't get off the block, but that's what I'm trying to do with him. Let's go ahead and do the same setup one more time here. And there's your setup right there. And we're going to crash the defensive line. The idea of this is to get yourself another extra defender. You can't do it until he gets in, and there I go. Now I'm dropping back. So now you can see me dropping him back. And now I've got, basically, if you go into this, into instant replay, you're going to see this turns into a 4-man pass rush. And that's what I was talking about earlier. We can get this into a 4-man pass rush. So if we look at it, right there, if we count those defenders up, now, granted, that one guy I'm dropping back, he's kind of late into the game as far as dropping back, but there's your 4 defenders rushing the quarterback. And then as you look at it, then we have basically these guys all dropping back in coverage, 6 defenders. So that's something that you can do if you wanted to get that extra defender. You just got to wait until you get around the corner with that linebacker before you can do anything else. And I will recommend this. If you do control this guy and you decide to drop him back, I would start working my way over here towards the right. That way, if the quarterback tries to take off, you're in some position to try to defend them. So you're really looking for this area here and trying to defend that if you want. That's how I would go about that. So that's that right there. And then let me show you one last thing you can do with this defense. So we're going to go ahead and crash the defensive line and go ahead and set it up real quick here. And then this guy right there. Now, the other thing you can do with this defense is you can take control of the safety if you want, and then you can bring him. Now, keep in mind, if you go this route, the downside of this, you do have some issues here, and I'll show you here. If these guys are running seam routes, this could be a little bit of an issue with here if they're going right down the seam. So that's the other thing you got to remember with that as far as with the defense. But let's go ahead and run it. And then just kind of, with that, I'm not really controlling him, but just make sure if you control that safety, you can do it like that where you're basically just watching everything in these areas here. You're trying to watch the seams. If you got one guy going down the seam, say the tight end is going down the seam, then you're going to cheat towards the seam if you're in control of that free safety. And that way you can take that away. So kind of watch and see which receiver is going down. For example, maybe this guy goes down the seam. Then if you're going to control the safety, then you need to kind of watch him. So that's what I want to point out there. Make sure you kind of watch this things. Now, I talked about press coverage. Let me show you press coverage, what happens. First off, this defender right here, he goes out, and that's not what you want right there. So that's part of the problem right there. So let's go ahead and run it. And for some reason, when I do this, it doesn't work quite as well. We got the pressure on that one, but a lot of times it may not work as well. So just be careful with the press coverage, even though I got it there. Let's do it again, same thing. I guess what you could try to do is, let me do this here. So if you guys notice what I just did there, I actually just slightly moved the safety here, this one right here. I slightly moved him to the inside, and then I went ahead and called press coverage. By doing that, then hopefully we'll get this to work the way we want it to work. So I'm going to go ahead and show it. That way you get press coverage on the outside. And there you go. So one of the things you could do as you're watching here is you could go ahead and as you take control of this guy and you go ahead and put him in into the seam, just slightly move him over. And that way when you call press coverage, he doesn't move on you. And then you could do the rest like that. So if you're playing a league, if you move a guy just a half a yard, I doubt they're going to say a whole lot to you. In most leagues, you can at least move one defender. So that's another option you can do. And you're still going to get that edge pressure off the edge. So remember that if that's something that you want to do, if you want to call press coverage, you can at least jam the receivers. Let's take a look at that on the outside, see how that's going. But that's another thing you can do to go ahead and, do some different things to And there's your press coverage as you see on your screen. They're pressing on the outside there. So let's go ahead and zoom in on this side of the field and take a look at it. And you can see right there as you look at it, this defender is in fact pressing. So with the setup I'm showing here, let's go back one more time into the setup. So we're going to go ahead and, not sure what's going on there, but let's go ahead and do this. Go ahead and put him to curl flat. Move him over slightly if you decide to call press coverage. And then do this. Now, as I talked about earlier, with the setup, you've got man coverage on the outside. If they put the guy in motion, it looks like man. But if to the inside, it's all zone. And so that kind of can maybe be able to confuse your opponent a little bit and kind of give him something that, might confuse him a little bit. I just want to point that out to you. So we're going to switch back to this defender one more time. We're going to go ahead and crash the defensive line. This is the defensive end right there. And then I'm just going to try to drop him back into coverage and work my way over to the right, as you saw on my screen right there. So those are some things you can do with this setup. Let's go back and instant replay one more time. And I'm going to show you just a couple more things as we go here. Might as well show them to you. So there it is right there. And then you can see that I'm working with this defender here. I'm working to the right to make sure that that quarterback doesn't take off. So that's kind of what I'm doing if I'm in control of that guy. All right, let's go do a couple other things here I want to show you. One of the things you can do here is you can go ahead and zone all the linebackers, such as what you see on your screen. And then you can go like this. So now you give them kind of the same setup. Maybe something, if you wanted to, you could even do something like this along this lines. Something like that, maybe. I mean, there's some, or you can let him blitz. That way it looks like it's the same setup. But now you got more guys dropping back in zone coverage. You can do a lot of different things here if you want. You can do, let's go ahead and put him QB spy here. Let's go ahead and go with the QB spy right there. And then you can see there's another setup you can do. Now you only got a 3-man pass rush. So what I'm saying is you can come out in this defense quickly and get out of the actual engage 8 into a 3-man pass rush with 8 defenders dropping back in some type of coverage. This right here obviously would take away your opponent from taking off and running with the quarterback. So there's a lot of things you can do right out of this defense without having to come out in another defense and make your coverage look a lot different. And so that way, it looks like a blitz. It looks like the same setup that you've been running, but now you can see you've got 8 defenders dropping back. One last thing we want to do here is I'm actually going to respot the ball. Let's go back in here because I want to respot the ball. And I want to show you this because, again, I've kind of talked about these multiple times. Guys, don't forget to flip the defense at the play call screen. And then let's go run against another formation just real quick. Let's say we run this against, let's run against this trips tied in formation just so you guys can see it. Okay, there's the trips tied in. So let's go ahead and do this. And there you go with that. As far as the setup is concerned, we're going to put this guy in QB spy. We're going to go ahead and crash the defensive line. And there's your setup right there. And then we're just going to go ahead and look to get pressure off the edge again. So he works against that formation. Obviously, there's going to be some coverage issues, as you can see on your screen. Every blitz always has some kind of coverage issues for the most part. But that's it on that as far as that goes. The only other thing I want to show is when I talked about this before. Let's go down here and put this inside the 8-yard line or so, somewhere around that 8-yard line. This is what I was talking about, again, with the 12th defender. You could do something like this if you wanted to. Let's go ahead and put him in a like a hook curl or something. So we got that right there, and then you can control this, and that would be your setup right there. Okay, that's something else you could do if you wanted to. Make sure you crash the defensive line if you so choose. And then your idea on this would be to basically just watch over the middle of the field with him, and you got pretty decent coverage, especially inside the down inside the 10-yard line where you can use the back of the end zone as your 12th defender. All right, guys, that's the breakdown here. Hopefully this is a defense you guys can take a look at. Remember, it is the 3-4 bear. It's called Engage 8. Make sure you flip it at the play call screen and be leery of the base align. Like I said, for this whole breakdown, I did not have base align on. It seems to work better without base align. And if you decide to use press coverage, make sure you move that one defender that we're putting in a seam flat or curl flat. Make sure you just move him over just a little bit. That way he doesn't move to the outside, and that way the blitz works the way it should be working. So again, this is the 3-4 bear, Engage 8. Hey Madden gamers, if you enjoy this Madden video or any other video, please subscribe to the Madden Guides YouTube channel. And as always, thanks for watching and for your support.